Well, hello and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Slinker, and I'm the director of the Department of Student Programs for the Indiana Association of School Principals. Thank you so much for your interest in writing questions for the Academic Super Bowl. This meeting is intended for anyone who is interested in writing questions in any subject area at either level. So if you're not familiar with the Academic Super Bowl is an academic competition unique to Indiana. It was created in the years between 1985 and 1987, and we started officially in 1987. Schools have subject area squads who compete by answering a set of 25 multiple choice questions based on an outline created by our writers according to a yearly theme. The theme is also created by our writers and determined by our writers with input from the coaches. We always want to give the coaches, as much input and as much ownership of this contest as we can. This contest is definitely near and dear to my heart. I started coaching it, and I coached it for 30 years before I retired in 2019 to take the position as director. So I've saved time for lots of questions at the end if you have lots of questions. Luckily, we have here with us today one of our current writers, Liz Clark, who writes our visual arts, and she will be weighing in when she thinks it's appropriate. And we will do what we can to answer any particular questions that you may have. And you may see in the background, that's little Miss Ivy. She's my beagle. She just suddenly popped through the picture. Anyway, let me move on here and talk about the agenda for our program this evening. I don't want to spend a lot of time tonight. I just want to give you the basics because, nobody wants to spend a lot of time in a meeting in the spring. But I'm going to go over the basic timeline of what the writers would be expected to do, the process we would want them to follow, the format we would want questions in, what we pay and how we pay our writers, and then I'll talk about any current openings that we have that we are definitely looking to fill. So the current timeline. Liz, this may look very familiar to you because this is what I used for our writers in our writers meeting last year. But this is the basic timeline that we use for each of our contests every year. So this would be for the contest that will take place in April of 2025. So the writers need to begin their process now. We have created a theme for this year's particular contest, and this next coming year's contest theme is Ireland in the 20th century. Now, thematic work is a little difficult for math and science, but we understand that. We've managed somehow to work it out with our math and science coaches because they come up with something that has to do with the theme. So, for example, the year we studied ancient Greece, we definitely studied the Pythagorean theorem with our math coaches. And a few years ago, we did, or actually this last year, our theme was the 1980s and 1990s. And so our science had quite a lot of material to work from. And they divided their work. I mean, biology dealt a lot with the Human Genome Project, and the physics section did a lot with the space program. So, or the shuttle program particularly. And we talked about natural disasters like Chernobyl and nuclear power and nuclear power plants. So we try to come up with a theme that is broad enough that each of our subject areas can grasp onto something from it and then run with it. And it is up to the writer to narrow the focus and make decisions on what the theme is going to be, the topic is going to be under that theme for the year. key is, the narrower the focus on the writing, the better it is. We want these kids to go beyond what they would get in a normal classroom. Their material is based on reading and research, and they want in-depth questions. The only caveat about that is that you're dealing with a time limit on the questions, and you're dealing with a multiple choice format with 4 answer choices. With math, we can sometimes give, our normal time limit for questions is 20 seconds, but with math, they can extend that to 30 or 40. And the same thing with science. If it is a calculation type of problem, they can extend time limits that far. But we want them to get that material in depth. Now, when we talk about the timeline here, you'll notice early summer 2024, it says identify sources for the outline. That's key because we're dealing with 200 to 270 schools, and we have to identify sources that all 200 to 270 of those schools are going to be able to get access to. We have to remember that schools are on a budget, and asking them to purchase an expensive piece of research material is not really good, because you got to remember they don't only research your subject, they also research for other subjects. So we're trying to keep the budget of the school in mind at all times. So we do encourage a lot of online research materials that are free and not behind a paywall. If there are items, if there are books that we do need to purchase, or not we purchase, but the teams will need to purchase, we need to get those identified early so we can get the titles and all of the data to Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble has to check the current market on those books, whether they are even available in any kind of number. You know, you may be able to get it at your local Barnes & Noble store, but that doesn't mean there are 270 copies anywhere in the country that they can get. Luckily, because publishing has changed so much in the last 30 years, luckily a lot of the materials that we can use will have an electronic version that even if we can't get the print version of that text, we may be able to get an electronic version of that text for the team to either purchase or download for free. We always prefer download for free, but you know, whichever way will work. So that needs to be done and completed by early summer. Now, here's the thing. We would like, now if you're a brand new writer, we wouldn't expect this at first because it's a longer process. But we would like to have all of the questions that you would write turned in by August 1st. Now, if you're a senior writer and you are the only one writing for that subject area, you would write about 200 questions. If you're a junior writer, it would be around 100 questions. If you are splitting with another writer, so for example, Liz is here, she writes our visual arts. We have someone else who would write music. Visual arts and music are 50-50 on the outline. So they would just split those numbers in half and you would know how many questions you would need to write. For our first year writers, you know, we give them a little bit more time because we know that they may not be used to the process and they're just jumping in here, you know, as the process is already beginning. But so some of the other dates that I have coming up on this timeline will show you that, oh, I absolutely have to have questions by this date. That's for people who have not met that deadline of August 1st. What we do is we have a 20% bonus for the writers if they turn all of their questions for all of the competitions and the practices in on that date of August 1st. If they don't, then they don't get the bonus on the questions. Okay. In August and September, what we do is we used to have a live coaches conference. COVID changed all that. And now, instead of bringing everyone together at the convention center, we provide all of the information that they would have gotten at the Live Coaches Conference in a format called Live Binder. And it's really just that. It's an electronic online binder of materials. And we can add to it and change it throughout the year. So, for example, if a coach finds a problem with a question, we can update it and leave the coaches a note in the binder, and it tells them, this has been fixed. So make sure you refresh your page and go back and get it. So it's a great tool for our coaches to use. So we present that. Well, we have them order it. If they want early access to it, they order it and they get it September 30th / October 1st, whichever one falls on a weekday. And then that material will be put on our website for everyone for free in January. But early access, so that they have all that material, that comes October 1st. So we would have to have for that book any practice questions, any handouts you would give coaches, and then we also record you explaining basically what your outline comes down to, and giving coaches any advice that you would want to give them on where to focus study, the types of questions you are likely to write, the reasoning behind your questions, if you have a special way of doing answer choices, things like that. And it's usually about a 10, 15, sometimes 20-minute video that we record and put in this live binder. So if you are, there are lots of advantages to writing all of your questions and at one time and having them due at one date. And a lot of that, and I think Liz may back me up on this because she did that for us this summer. A lot of that is when you write all of your questions at one time, you can decide over a spectrum of all of your questions, which ones are more difficult, which ones are easier, which ones you would use for a state contest if you're a senior, or which ones you would use for coach practice, all the way through that process. If you write, only the practice questions in August, and then in December, you're sitting down to try and write state questions, sometimes it's difficult to remember, wait a minute, I already wrote on this section. It also allows you to balance your questions to the outline that you create, so that coaches expect, if you say it's going to be 30% on this particular topic, they expect a certain number of questions in each round on that particular topic. And if you write them all at once, it makes it a lot easier to do for you. For
I
me,
thought it was easier to write them all at once.
You thought it was easier?
Yeah, I thought it was easier because, like you said, everything was fresh. You're like, okay, this one should go for practice. This one, yeah.
Yeah. Our writers who've been writing for a long time, most of them will do it all at once and get it done and get it over with. And then essentially for the rest of the school year, your only responsibility is if I have a question. And, if a coach has a question, because we put in the live binder a form for the coaches to ask the writers questions that they may have done, at a coaches conference. And I pass those along to the writers and get responses for the coaches pretty much throughout the year. It just depends upon when they're working in the binder. It also, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a major advantage for me when writers get everything done in August. Our department, it's amazing. People always think that we have a relatively robust staff in our department running these programs. The truth is we have 3 people, and each of us is in charge of certain contests. So Academic Super Bowl is mine. And that means that from deciding what the topic is going to be to running the state competition as the MC, this whole thing is mine. But I also have other contests that I run throughout the year and help and support with the other programs. So we have workflow at different times of the year. And if you get this stuff to me by August, I can get it into the computer and back for proofreading, and we can get you your money. And all of that can be done at the beginning before we start Spell Bowl season and cheer competition season. And that because those take us to Thanksgiving. And if we don't get them in August, we won't be able to work with them at all until December, January, which when our first contests are in March, that's a really tight turnaround, especially since we are also dealing with Math Bowl and Science Bowl and Academic All-Stars and, just on and on. So we need to make sure that we keep according to the timeline. So that's important. Let me pop this timeline here for a second and move to the next slide. And I'm going to conveniently, pardon me, let the dog back out of the room because she's whining, and that would be a little bit of a challenge here. Heidi.
Is there something I need to do in order to be able to see what Jill is presenting?
Can everybody, can you see the screen with the PowerPoint? Yes, you can. I'm not sure what you need to do, Chris.
I've been trying to mess with all kinds of stuff, but I've got nothing.
You got nothing. Okay. So what do you see on your screen?
It's just a blue dot with JS, which is weird because I can see everybody else.
Huh. Yeah, see, I'm sharing my PowerPoint screen.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I mean, if you're really desperate, let me do this. I'll turn my camera on and at least you can see me. But what I am going to do is I will, as I said, I'm recording this and I will share it on our website so you can see the slides. But what I will try to do is I will vocalize what's on the slides as we continue so that you are better able to follow.
Yeah. Okay.
That'll work?
Thank you.
Okay. So this second timeline just basically follows through with what we need to do by the end of the year. So in early January, we're going to post the live binder with all the coach materials. Mid-January, I have to have all of the junior invitational questions in. And then I have to have the second senior invitational questions by that point. Mid-February, I've got to have all the senior area questions. And then what begins is my recording, because I record all of the questions for junior, invitational, and area, all of the questions for senior, invitational 1, invitational 2, area. And at the same, that's for all the subject areas. And then I edit those to make the presentations. So that takes quite a while. I also record the elementary math bowl in that time period as well. So junior questions, the area questions have to be received by the end of February. Mid-March, we're looking at state questions coming in. I try to have my team meeting with my writers mid-March. We are now 1 month beyond that, but we will have our writers meeting at that point to discuss where you are in the next year's process and to come up with topic ideas for the year after that. So we're constantly planning for the future with the contest. It's just a rotation. Let's see. The next slide here. Get back here. Then by early April, which is what I'm doing right now, I just finished recording the senior area competition, and I'm currently recording the junior area competition. Senior area takes place the third week of April, and junior area takes place the final Saturday of April. Then senior state is in early May at Purdue. So it's the first weekend of May in Purdue. And then the summer we start all over again. So it's just a constant process. With the process itself, you know, you're going to send me questions that you have written. I'm going to type those questions into PowerPoints. Then I'm going to send them back to you for proofreading. You make any changes that are needed. We'll edit the PowerPoints. We record the contest and send it to the hosts. And as I'll read it, I've already said it, but it's just another comment. Meanwhile, we're also running Spell Bowl, Cheer Championship, Quiz Bowl, Science Bowl, Math Bowl, Academic All-Stars, etc., with our 3-person staff. So punctuality in getting questions to us when we need them is absolutely vital, if nothing else, to my sanity. Because, you know, if I can get things done on time, then it's going to be accurate and well done, which is what we want to do. A little bit about the format that we want the questions in. One of our longtime writers, and this, Chris, is where you're definitely going to need to look at the PowerPoint or the video online. But this is a template that one of our longtime writers created for his questions. He was our social studies writer, and he wrote both junior and senior social studies questions. But he created the template, and it helps us so much. It'll help you as a writer as well. But the template includes, you're to include your subject area. You know your subject area, but it helps me when I'm putting the questions together. Your subject area, the source of the question. Now, with science, it may be this particular formula we're using. But with art, you know, it may be this is a standard definition of an art term that you would get, or it's an interpretation. But for example, with social studies here, it is a question from the one source that he would use. He always selected for our social studies kids one book that they would study to keep everything narrow and deep. And so it would be, you know, here's the study guide section that this covers on my study guide. Here is the book that it came from and the page where it came from. Then he would tell me which competition this should go with. And it's just a form where you can highlight the box, you know, okay, this one was for invitational 1. You know, is this invitational? Is this an area? Is this a state question? What level is it? And then also, and it helps, I think, the writers, when you write the question, to go back and look at it and ask yourself, is this a memory or comprehension question? Is this just, you know, is it just a recall question, or are we looking at analysis and application and evaluation? Because we want a large number of the questions to be at the deeper levels. You know, if you're making simple memory and fact questions, fine, but those should be for practice. You know, we want questions that are more challenging for the competitions themselves. And that's where writing them all together and then ranking, okay, this one's really kind of easy. We'll do this for practice. This one's a really challenging one. Maybe it should be a state final tiebreaker question where that comes in. And then we'll ask you, is this a regular competition question? Is it a tiebreaker question? Would this be one you would do for an interdisciplinary round? You know, like, for example, you may not be able to cross it with, like music may not be able to cross with social studies necessarily, but maybe in the interdisciplinary, you're comparing different types of music, or you're comparing 2 different people from your outline. So it's crossing something with the interdisciplinary question, or it's a challenging one, or, you know, it's a science question that asks calculation, or it's a math question that uses a story problem from science or social studies. We try to work with those. And we also ask you to provide alternate questions. So is this a question you would use as an alternate? But if you mark them on this guide here, when you turn them into me, I have all the information that I need. And then if later on somebody challenges your question, you have all the information that you need as to where you need to go back to let them know an answer as to why your answer was the question, or was the correct answer, pardon me, or if perchance you need to change something, but you know your source that you can go back to. What I found, the writer of these social studies questions, he was very rarely challenged, and even more rarely overturned on questions because he had his source and he could go back to it immediately. So that helps a lot. It's a handy helper for our writers. The format, if you were to write math questions or science questions, obviously this is something that I put on Word, and it can, you know, you can expand it however long you need it for the questions. We would ask that you remember that the questions need to fit on a PowerPoint slide and need to be readable from the audience. So that's a challenge in some cases because of how complex people want to get on questions. And it's just too much. You can't read it from the screen. So it makes it difficult. So we work on editing those down a little bit. So what we would need per subject area. Now, for juniors, we would need approximately 105 questions on the subject area. That's because we have the coach practice questions, we have one invitational and an area competition for the junior level. And the junior level students are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So as we determine the materials, we need to make sure that they are age appropriate, level appropriate, but challenging for those levels. The senior level, we're looking at between 190 and 200 questions per subject area. Now, the senior level are more likely to be divided into groups. For example, over the last years, we've had 2 math coaches, and they basically write 50% of the questions each. One of them was more of a geometry specialist, and the other one was more of a calculus specialist. And so, you know, she would take on the calculus questions, he would take on the geometry questions, and they would come up with a specialized research subject, and one of them would take those questions as well. So science, we divide essentially into physics and astronomy, and then we have biology, and then we have chemistry. And so each of them writes a third of the questions. We've done that before. Our science coach at the junior level has requested an additional science coach. So, you know, that's, I told him it's like, you know, how many questions that you're writing. If you want an additional coach, or an additional writer, sorry, then that would, you know, that would be possible. So we're looking to get an additional science writer at the junior level as well. And it may be something that, you know, you would write at the junior level for a couple of years, and then maybe you decide that you know, if we have an opening at the senior level, you would want to write at the senior level as well. So, you know, there are possibilities there. The payment, okay, you know, this is a labor of love here. We pay essentially, if all the questions are completed by August 1st, we pay $5 per question. And after that date, the price goes down to $4 per question. As I said, it's a 20% bonus if you get them all to us by August 1st. We pay once all of the questions are completed and turned in. We also will pay you for the seminar recording. We generally pay $75 for the seminar recording. For senior writers, we invite the senior writers to come to the state competition at Purdue and read their questions to the state finalists, and greatly appreciate when they do that. And we also pay them $75 to do that as well. So that's the basics of what's going on with that. We do have current openings for writers for this coming school year. We have social studies senior level. We have social studies junior level. So I know that you guys are not social studies people in this meeting, because I asked when you came in. But if you do know someone who is interested in writing social studies at either or both levels, please let them know, have them contact me, and I will give them the information that they need. And they can always go and look at the materials that we have posted. We also need 2 math writers at the senior level. Both of our math writers retired this year. They finished up the year and retired. Our social studies writer was forced to retire due to health reasons. And as I said a little bit earlier, we are looking for that extra science writer at this time. So if you decide that you are interested in doing that, please email me, as soon as possible, and we'll get you any more information that you need. We try to provide things like, forms on how to write a really good multiple choice question. I mean, I was an English teacher. I wrote essay questions, or short answer questions all the time. I never thought I had good multiple choice questions. But some of the material that we will give you is really good about how do you write a better multiple choice question than maybe what you've been used to writing. Our theme for next year is Ireland in the 20th century. I'm really excited about that particular theme, and looking forward to seeing what people are going to do with that idea. So, questions for me. And Fritz, if you have questions, pop them in the chat, and I will I'll be glad to look at them that way and bring those to everybody's attention. As soon as I can get my, there we go. Okay. Oh, got the chat open. Okay. Anybody have any questions for me?
I actually did.
Mhm.
On the practice questions, are those included in your big set, or are those in addition to?
Those are included. Yeah, we would ask at the senior level, each subject write about 50 to 60 practice questions for the coaches. At the junior level, we ask about 35 questions for the coaches. And those were a little bit more flexible on what kinds of questions you write, because it is just to get them thinking a little bit more about where they need to do more research. So we've had some questions that are just a little bit open-ended, and ask them to look that material up. We've had writers that will put terms that they expect you to know and understand in those questions, so that students can make sure that they know those terms. They may be the answer, they may be the distractors, but things that you would expect them to know and understand and be able to use that knowledge of in the question.
One thing that I'll say that I think helped me is you have a database of all the old questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was helpful.
Yes, we do that that was one of the pluses from COVID. I was able to create through LiveBinder essentially an archive of
Yeah.
all of our old questions. So
Yeah, I think that's helpful.
yeah, if you look and you want to see what styles of questions that the former writer did, or even a couple of writers ago, what kinds of questions we've had before, that's a good helpful source.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, I will wrap this up then. And I appreciate your time. I know what spring is like. It's got a lot of stuff going on, but I appreciate your time here tonight. I will take this recording and post it on our Academic Super Bowl website so that anyone who is possibly interested in writing any of the subjects can have it available to them. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And I will wish you a happy spring rainy day.
Thank you.
All
Yeah,
righty.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.